Welcome back to ReadingBear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, Neighbor Hoa Head Gets a Petty Revenge. This all starts a few years back when my dad passed away after a 5-year-old battle with cancer. He was still living alone in the house where I grew up. After he died, my wife and I moved to the house to clean up and to try sell it. At the time, my wife was also pregnant and had to stay in the hospital for months because of IUGR and other complications. The head of the Hoa is your typical boomer. Got lucky and lives comfortably. They spend the summers on their lake house and travel a lot, which means they are rarely at their house. At first they seem sympathetic as they've known me since I was a child and known my dad for over 30 years. My wife gives birth and our firstborn has a genetic disease and the prognosis is not good. I'm back and forth from the hospital to the house and to work, trying to deal with everything. Occasionally Hoa guy complains about our yard. We've not planted the same flowers as neighbors, so it's not uniform. Note he absolutely knows our situation and has seen our child when we were able to stay at the house and not in the hospital. We have a rotating system of Hoa government, 3 to 4 households are part of it every year, only the Hoa head has been the same guy for a decade now. When we move in, it's our household's turn to take part in the government. I attend the meetings and do what is asked. Other neighbors are very nice to us. After a year our girl dies. I plummet into depression having just lost my dad and our baby girl. Still living in my old childhood house that now feels haunted. I definitely don't uphold the house facade to the standards, but it's not in total disrepair. I still mow the lawn. After about 6 months, we are finally able to find a new house and put the old house on the market. For some reason, this annoys the Hoa guy. I still to this day don't understand why. He comes to knock on my door and complain how messy it is. It honestly isn't, there's no trash laying around, just needs raking some leaves. I politely listen to him and promise to go tidy up. Our house sells on the first viewing, nobody has anything to complain about. Hoa guy tries to come ask how much we got. I just said what we asked for and walk away. We move out and I hope I never hear from this guy again. We've lived in the new house for a few months and I get a call from the Hoa guy. I'm at work so I can't answer. I send him a text in a few hours explaining politely that I'm unable to answer and could he text me if it's urgent. He texts that he needs signatures to Hoa documents from the year I was in the government. I answer no problem, I'll come deal with it next time we come back to the area. We live in another city now, which shouldn't be longer than a week. He answers okay. Next day I get 3 more phone calls and 2 texts that just say, answer. Thinking it's an emergency I call him back only to have him shout at me how disrespectful I am not to call him back yesterday and how he's still mad how badly we upheld our dad's house. Note again, no other neighbors complained and house viewing was successful without complaints. I answer to him that if he cannot speak to me with respect I won't speak to him. I hung up on him shouting and blocked the number. Now the thing is, he will have to hold an additional Hoa meeting to make new documents that need to be signed by all the neighbors explaining why there's a signature missing in the original ones. This will be a huge hassle for him, but I don't give a duck. All the other neighbors were always nice to us and compassionate about our grief. Next one is titled, Mess with the Dominatrix and You'll Cry. I work as a camgirl, doing video chats with guys for money. Most of the sessions I have are fetish related and I work for many small sites. One day I had a guy wanting to be my slave, meaning he wanted me to be a dominatrix and to command him to perform painful and degrading acts on himself. Most of these so-called slaves are actually very softcore in what they are willing to do. Initially he paid for a 1-hour session and we got along so well he paid for a second hour. At the start of the session I always set up a safe word and we talk about turn-ons, limits and I respect them. It's part of the dom-sub dynamic to build a trustful relationship. I did the session, he seemed happy and so was I. He was indeed very softcore. A month later the site owner messaged me to say that a client contacted him accusing me of fraud, threatening to call the police. He said I blackmailed him to make him send money and never delivered the session. I showed the screenshots of the conversation, so I was off the hook with the site and they didn't issue a refund, but the guy asked for a chargeback in his credit card company and I had around $400 deducted from my paycheck. It's important to stress that services of sexual nature have very different billing rules. It's against the terms of service of all the mainstream payment processors such as PayPal, Venmo, Google Pay, etc. You have to own a high-risk merchant account with very high fees, so we use third-party companies that facilitate it for us. Some of them cover these eventual chargebacks, others don't. This one didn't. Fast forward 6 months, I was contacted on Skype by a guy wanting to be my slave for 1 hour. This is not a rare request, so I didn't connect the dots at first. I sent him a link for payment, luckily this time in a site that covers chargebacks. He paid. When he opened his camera, there he was. I never forgot his face and accent because he was very weird. It was the same guy who accused me of fraud and got his money back. I'd have terminated the call right away, but knowing I was protected by chargeback in this other site, I decided to get my revenge, so I pretended I haven't recognized him. Knowing he was softcore but willing to obey, I started to give him tasks that were literally turn-offs for him. I didn't set up a safe word this time. I let it escalate quickly to very hardcore stuff and used all the mind games to push him to his limits. He went 20 minutes straight, he was crying until he gave up and hung up on me. I even called back a few times and he didn't answer. I clearly stated that his remaining minutes were forfeited because he left the session on his own will. A week later, the owner of the site asked for proof of the session, because the client contacted them saying the service wasn't delivered and he wanted a refund. I had everything documented. They pay for the time, not for the actions, so whatever happened in the session is at our own discretion. He never got the refund and this site has a chargeback protection, so he didn't get the money back this time. He is blacklisted now and never heard from him again. I hope he left the BDSM world for good. Next one is titled, I Can't Be Hired Directly? You Don't Get My System. So my backstory, when I was about 20-ish, I worked for a company named for a fruit that didn't sell fruit. Actually, I worked for a primary supplier for them who was doing the repair division in a new location. Cast, myself, me supervisor, super lead, led. So I started in a smaller position and quickly moved up to repair evaluations. Basically, if the thing worked when we got it but not after the repair, I need to find out why and correct it. Management had to manually search every device in an Excel sheet every day to find the devices I worked on. I took it on myself to design and implement an automatic system. Given I was a temp at the time, they extended my employment with the promise of direct hire due to this design. It worked flawlessly for close to 2 years. Right around the time I was due to figure out if I was being brought up or not, lead starts playing around and avoiding the situation. I contact lead multiple times a week for the next month with little to no reply. I spoke with super after lead started ignoring me and not replying. I was getting desperate at this time to know whether I need to look for new work soon or if I would have a great job for the years to come. Finally, I had enough. I rebuilt the system I designed with a kill switch, so to speak, and hid it in the system. I emailed this new system to ask the managers, including lead and super. They all liked the new update and praised my ingenuity. I let them know that I was the only one who knew how to design and operate this, but would love to be brought up to permanent so I could train someone else if I were to take vacations or something of the like. This was ignored. Edit, in light of learning I could be more specific, here's an explanation of this kill switch. It's an Excel sheet that linked to another daily generated file from the repair division. I created the link and was, am Microsoft certified in Office, to know if it's still a thing. It was back then. Haven't needed to be certified in forever now, so I knew fun workarounds and tricks. My email is tied into the system, so it would automatically scrape the required info into another sheet, which was then parsed even more into other sheets. It's long and complex but did exactly what was needed for the people who needed different sets of data. My email was tied into the design very specifically in specific places. The data emailed out, if you're familiar with Excel, doesn't usually include the formulas to reach what's shown in the boxes. I ensured it wasn't as the higher-ups like to copy-paste to their emails onwards. Easy for them, easy for me. Finally my last week was here and I reminded Led and Super I haven't been moved to permanent status. I don't have a replacement for this position, to which I received the usual, "It's not that hard, we know the system and anyone can do it." So my last day, they have me start bundling out my last report and to close out my email and file system. The kill switch was the part that was wiped in the device reset before I was allowed to collect my last check. This wipe is to ensure I haven't linked my provided computer to an outside source, I guess. Never quite knew exactly why. They wiped my computer, took my badge and ensured I wasn't sneaking any devices out and wished me well. Fast forward a few days when Super calls me asking why the file system isn't working after I left. I reminded him that it was built on my company provided device and I hadn't been allowed to teach anyone else the system before I left. The silence as the wheels clicked in place was like hearing heaven itself. He immediately hung up and called back asking me to come back full-time with benefits immediately. I had already taken a new job, interviewed the day before and accepted the position in the spot. The money was way better, and was to start the next week. I told Super his offer had to beat my new hourly rate and effective the next day or no dice. He never called back, and from friends who will work there, that system had never been fixed, and nobody can figure it out enough to reverse engineer it. That was close to 12 years ago now. I'm pretty proud of myself. Next one is titled, Bought House. Old owners were cheap. We bought a house a couple of months ago and the sellers insisted that we pay several small fees that are customarily covered by the seller. The total was $187, and in comparison to the house price we weren't going to walk away over something so small. We renovated the house and there was a table credenza thing that had been built into the entryway. After demo, we were planning on throwing it out. When one of the neighbors noticed we had put it outside to be thrown out, they texted the old owners to see if they wanted it, as it was something they said they had loved about the house. The old owners texted me, since we were getting rid of it anyway, surely we wouldn't mind if they came by and picked it up instead. I told them interestingly we had recently gotten an offer from someone else to buy it for $187. Since it was theirs originally, I told them we'd be happy to part with it for $188. They dropped the check off and picked it up a week later. Next one is titled, Chicago Snow Showdown. In Chicago the last few weeks we have seen feet of snow come down. My apartment building, 3 flat, has alley parking. Our alley has been filled with snow probably about 1.5 feet or so. I own a massive snowblower and have been clearing the alley whenever I can. A lot of the snow is ice and is tough to chew through, but I've still been going hard for my neighbors. I have an adjacent garage where my wife parks our second car. The a-holes to either side of me decided to shovel all their snow directly in front of my garage. Tonight, while a friend was leaving my apartment, they got stuck, so I ran to my second garage to get my shovels, also where my snow blower is. That's when I realized my dick neighbors piled their snow about a 4 feet drift in front of my garage. Etiquette in this situation is when you dig out, you never dig in a neighbor, and since I've been actively digging everyone's garage out, I got upset. Well, guess who is waking up to 4-foot drifts blocking their garages? Not me. My drunk butt just snow blew the alley and piled everything in front of Theses a hole's garages. Call me petty, but I got the gear to back it up. Next one is titled, I'm slowly hoarding my mum's kitchen utensils. So my mother drinks a lot of coffee. Always with some form of dairy and sugar. So she stirs her sugar in and then leaves the dirty spoon on the counter. Every single time. And for some reason it drives me nuts. I've asked her why she can't just rinse it under the tap and put it in the drying rack. But she says she's just lazy and stuck in her ways. So now every time I see a dirty teaspoon on the counter I wash it and squirrel it away. It's been about a week and I have an entire jar worth of silverware on my desk. At first it was just the spoons, and then those began growing sparse, so she began stirring her coffee with whatever was available: steak knives, forks, tablespoons. She's a goddamn animal and I'm bringing some civility to the jungle. She recently asked my grandmother, who lives downstairs, if she has any of our silverware. She knows something's not quite right, but I'm going to keep this going for as long as I can, and then one more day after that. Next one is titled, I took the cheese grater. My ex of 9 years kept the house when we split. I'd never had a key. In hindsight, that's a red flag, but anyway, I had a garage door opener and the door code, so that had always sufficed. Everything was amicable, so I was very surprised when, during a visit to collect my belongings, I was unable to access the guest house where most of my stuff was stored. The door code had been changed. I checked several times to be sure. Couldn't get in. Incensed, I went back into the kitchen in the main house and took the cheese grater. It was technically mine to take, but I had planned to leave it behind because the man ate more cheese than any human I've ever seen, and he needed it more than I did. My own brand of vigilante justice felt good that day. Next one is titled, Autistic Flatmate Too Quiet and Weird for You? Enjoy your borderline nightmare. I agreed to move in with 3 girls who I thought were my friends 1 year when I was at university. I have ASD plus ADHD-PI, which was undiagnosed at the time, so I didn't really do much except study and go to a couple of student societies. Once I'd done a large share of the legwork to secure them a nice flat, this 3 came out with a cock and bull story to justify kicking me out before we'd even moved in. They'd decided they didn't want me living with them because I was too quiet, too weird, and invented a cock and bull story to justify kicking me out. Finding out the real reason they needed my room was hurtful as hell, but I secured a room shortly after in a really nice flat that was nearer the university. I was sharing with a friend who had been unable to continue being friends with the girl she was originally going to be sharing with. We got on great. The actions left them with a problem though, a spare room at a time when most students had already found flatmates. Eventually they found a girl who happened to be the ex-friend of my flatmate. Had we still been speaking, either of us would have warned them that she had, I think, professionally diagnosed borderline personality disorder that she refused to treat. There then unfolded a complete crap show. Over the course of the year, their flatmate 1. Trashed the place. And I mean trashed. Holes through plaster. This happened more than once. 2. Stole their possessions and sold kitchen appliances. 3. Did all the ducking drugs all the ducking time. 4. Brought home random men to have sex with, including drug addicts and men who tried to sexually assault the other flatmates. 5. Had the police at the door a few times. 6. Screaming at people for even the tiniest noise. 7. Was screaming at them for things they apparently did to her in past lives and other nonsensical crap. 8. Left blood all over the place from self-harm, half-assed suicide attempts, and her periods. She decided to bleed all over herself and their furnishings instead of using hygiene products because duck 'em, that's why. There's probably more I've forgotten. They lived with her for most of the academic year until her family found out what was going on. By then she'd endangered and traumatized all 3, destroyed them academically and cost them a small fortune in repairs. Decent rentals within walking distance of the university were scarce, and the crazy escalated over time, so they had to keep peace with the landlord. Next one is titled, You Take All the Donuts? Try this one. I had a coworker who took all donuts I made for the whole team. He polished the whole plate, 25 donuts, within an hour. I was angry like hell and thought to myself, that can't go unpunished. A few days later I had made new ones and 2 big eclairs. They were covered with a sugar frosting and looked delicious. The eclairs though weren't filled with vanilla cream like usual, but I used Vegemite to do the cream. To hide that, I used whipped cream to cover the ugly and disgusting brown cream. Vegemite is a yeast extract very popular in Australia. It tastes horrible. I put these 2 on a separate plate and hid the rest of the pastries. My coworker couldn't hold back and took the eclairs. After he took the first bite, I heard a coughing and a something like a projectile vomiting. I saw him coming out of our coffee kitchen with a snow-white face and tears in his eyes. He got his just dessert and never took anything without asking. Edit, I didn't mean to offend our friends from down under. I love the country, but Vegemite is something we aren't used to here in Germany. Next one is titled, My Awesome Neighbor. So this summer was out gardening, was in regular shorts and shirt and my kids playing in the kid pool. When the dog's going crazy at the gate. So I see a man say hi. He stated he had just moved in and his kids could see my family's backyard. Ask if I could dress more modestly. He said like cover my arms and legs and not let the kids run in underwear. I said no thank you and to leave my property. My children had swimsuits on, they were not naked. I kept getting dirty looks from him on walks. He asked 2 more times. So this Christmas we put up the biblical picture up of Adam and Eve naked in the Garden of Eden. There is now a for sale sign up after only a year. We also added another dog and security cameras. Last one is titled Petty Canine Revenge. Our first dog, Bo, was a mix, part Jack Russell and part miniature Schnauzer. A small dog, white with black markings, that was active. The bully in this story lived 2 doors down the lane, a large Doberman. The lane was through a former train station. Bo had an outdoor box, but was allowed to roam if we were outside. But Dobie was off-leash frequently. The Dobie wasn't vicious, but it would chase Bo regularly. The day of revenge was snowy, about 20 inches. Everyone was shoveling your own driveway first, and then working to clear the lane. The neighbor, the Dobie owner, cleared off a covered porch and the sidewalk out to the lane and went back inside. We were out shoveling the lane. Bo was out with us, enjoying the snow, jumping in, tunneling through it and having a ball. The Dobie was out too, but it wouldn't leave the porch. Bo realized that he had an advantage. Bo ran up the neighbor's sidewalk and barked at the Dobie, then jumped into the snowbank. The Dobie to the right side of the porch, but didn't follow Bo into the snow. Bo worked his way back to the shoveled area and ran up the walk again. This time the Dobie was still on the right side of the porch, and so Bo went right up on the porch and barked at the Dobie. Then off into the snow again. The Dobie stayed on the right side of the porch, watching Bo in the deep snow. Bo wasn't finished, he repeated the sneak up on the Dobie, then escape into the deep snow until he was exhausted. Then he laid down in the shoveled lane, having tormented his bully for more than a half hour. Thanks for listening.